Hello everyone, welcome to another Quad Education Test Prep Fundamentals video. My name is Tom, and today we're going to be talking about a topic from the SAT and ACT that is foundational to any good math performance. It's one of those fundamental algebra topics that actually some people can be a bit rusty at as they've moved on to more complicated math curricula. That topic is isolating quantities. So let's take a look.
So, isolating quantities. It either sounds like a very complicated process or a very lonely activity. But kidding, no, it's really neither of those things. Isolating quantities is just the process of using your fundamental algebra skills to move stuff around based on the instructions in a question. These questions are instances where you have to be really on your algebra A game. That means you have to be following your order of operations, PEMDAS and all that, making sure to be really careful with your positive and negative signs, making sure you don't make a sign error, and most of all, keeping things as quick and easy as possible for yourself, because in algebra, there's a lot of ways to do things, and you always want to keep it to the quick way while you're doing these timed tests. Okay, before we get into the math, hopefully I'm not getting too much on my soapbox here when I say that this is one of those elements of your academic toolset that you should really have dialed in. Being confident with basic algebra is the bedrock of basically all math. And if your foundation is shaky, you're going to continue to struggle with math as you get to more complicated topics. Anyway, ran over. Let's look at some examples. Okay, with this first one, pretty simple. Take a second here, make sure that you can isolate x in this equation. Okay, let's run through it. Y equals 13kx minus 6. So if we want to start to get x by itself, the easiest thing is just to put 6 on the other side. So y plus 6 equals 13kx. And then we just divide by 13k and we have x by itself. That's just going to be y plus 6 over 13kx. Pretty straightforward. And let's just go do the second one. A slight bit more complicated process to isolate v, but still pretty reasonable. So the first thing we're going to do, we want v to be by itself. Obviously, we don't want to have this denominator here. So multiply both sides by 12 plus g. That's going to give us t times 12 plus g. And whether you distribute the t to the 12 plus g or not is sort of a convention. As I always say, I'm a little lazy, so I'm not going to do that. That's going to give us t times 12 plus g equals 3v squared. And we'll go ahead and divide by 3 to get t times 12 plus g over 3 equals v squared. And then to do the last step, we're just going to square root both sides. It's going to give us that whole mess in the radical there. T times 12 plus g over 3. That's all we're meaning. So that's all we mean when we talk about isolating quantities. Just get the letter that they're requesting by itself by itself. Okay, before we go to example problems, I want to talk about a specific kind of SAT math question that trips folks up a lot. Let me read through this really quickly, then I'll comment on it. So the question is, Z is a number of standard lowest price technically acceptable contracts issued by the prime contractor to those subcontractors operating within GWAC A. X is the number of amendments to the FAR which incentivize small business activities, and Y is the frequency of audits performed on registered GWAC A contractors by the Inspector General on a semi-annual basis. What is X in terms of Y and Z? That's just a lot of ridiculous letters. And the text here is intentionally meaningless. This literally does not make any sense if you know what any of these words mean. But that's not the point. And that's actually what they're trying to do with this question, is to distract you from the entire activity. The way that you want to approach these questions is to get rid of the smoke and mirrors that's going on. So you can recognize this based on the fact that there's this equation at the top, and then all the answers are equations as well. And the best way to keep this question reasonably straightforward is to just get rid of all of that. You don't need to read any of it. Please don't. If you see equation in the top and equations the answers, all that means is you just need to get whatever letter, and it's always going to be the same letter, get x by itself. And so if we were going to do that, we would just multiply by 21, get 21z equals 13x squared plus 3y, subtract 3y, 21z plus 3y, or sorry, minus 3y. Let's fix that. And then that's going to equal 13x squared. Divide by 13, and 13 is prime, so we're not going to be able to factor anything out. 21z minus 13y over 13 equals x squared. And then, like I did with the previous problem, we just square root it to get x equals the square root of 21z minus 3y over 13. So really not that bad. And you can see there that the answer would just be C, because that's the same thing. Okay, now let's take a look at some example problems. Take a couple of minutes and see if you can't solve these two problems I've thrown together. Okay, let's take a look, focusing in on the first one. So for this one, they're asking what is G in terms of L, N, and K, and we can see G there in the denominator of that first fraction. So there's a whole lot of stuff separating G from G by itself. So first thing we'll do is subtract K to the fourth from both sides. That's going to give us L minus K to the fourth equals 4K over 0.5 G minus 5K. Okay, now we can do a little trick here. Since we have this denominator right here, and I want that to be by itself on the other side, I can just flip these two. That's a nice little algebra move. And we'll say that means that 0.5 G minus, 5K equals 4K over L minus K to the fourth. And then we can just add 5K to both sides. That's going to give us, and I'll just bring this up here for a little bit more space. We're going to have 5G equals 4K over, L minus K to the fourth. And we've just added 5K to both sides. And now we need to divide by 0.5, which is the same thing as dividing by a half, which is the same thing as multiplying by 2. So, by the way, watch our video on dividing by fractions to get a full update on how that works. So we're basically multiplying by 2 to get rid of the 0.5, and that's going to give us G equals, okay, so 4K over L minus K to the 4 times 2, that's going to be 8K over the same thing, because the denominator is not changing, and then we're going to have 10K now for our K value to the right. And you can see that the answer there is D. So nothing really new, just a bunch of being careful with details and making sure that you're taking the easiest possible approach to getting this done. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Okay, and here is another example of those SAT smoke and mirrors questions where I'm just going to totally ignore all of this because better things to do than learn about the singular's popularity calculation. So anyway, we have P, and then we need to have H by itself. And this is interesting because we have H in the numerator and the denominator here. So the way that we're going to do this, and this is pretty tricky, is we'll multiply over our H minus K, and we're going to have P times H minus K, capital, equals H. And then I'm going to distribute out the P, so we have PH minus K equals H. Another nice little algebra trick is something minus something equals something else. I can just flip these two, and it's going to tell me that PH minus H equals K. And probably the coolest little trick here is I'm just going to actually pull out a factor of H on this. It's going to be H times P minus 1 equals K. And then pretty straightforward, now I can just divide by P minus 1 and get H equals K over P minus 1.
Okay, that's it for this video. Hopefully I've been able to illustrate why isolating quantities is so essential to being successful at the math sections of these tests. If you're feeling a little bit rusty still on this topic, a simple Google search will yield literally hundreds of pages of example problems. Or, better yet, reach out to us so we can set you up with a tutor and get you a personalized plan today. If you found this material useful, we hope that you'll like and share this video and subscribe to Quiet Education. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.